to have some fun today as everyone is coming in. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
It's great to see you. Christina and I are very happy to see you as you're coming in today. We are getting closer and closer to the Future Blockchain Summit, which will be happening it's less than a month away. It's only a couple of weeks away. And we will all come together in Dubai. And Christina, you know what I love about Dubai?
Oh gosh, I'm looking forward to meeting you all there. Let me know, what's your favorite thing in Dubai?
So Dubai is called a pool, P-U-L-L city, a pool city. And the reason why I mean a pool city is because it pulls great talent and great minds together. It's a place to go meet all these people that are being pulled in. And this is an amazing event, being GITEX and Blockchain Summit, FinTech Surge, Expo 2020. It is the epicenter of opportunity that's taking place while we're there. How does that sound?
Oh my gosh. And that's all that waits for us, all of us. That's incredibly inspiring.
Okay, so Christina is, of course, the editor-in-chief over at Cointelegraph, which is the de facto standard of all news that's on crypto and blockchain and digital assets, NFTs. And she is in the need to know everything. What's hot right now? What's happening?
Oh gosh, well, I guess nothing new. So another Ethereum mining pool forced to close due to China crackdown. Is it something that seems new to you, Ken?
I think China has been probably one of the most interesting indicators of where governments are trying to get extremely aggressive when it comes to crypto, because they're either worried or they want to get massive control. And I think China basically saying, hey, if you're not using the digital yuan, we don't want you in our country whatsoever. That's interesting.
That's really interesting. And that also gives opportunities to other countries to experiment with crypto and with mining in particular. So, for example, El Salvador president today teased the geothermal Bitcoin mining farm. He posted even a video in his Twitter. So geothermal, it means from a volcano. Can you imagine?
Right.
Mining.
So they're using that as an energy source, because that's obviously mining. You got to find a cheap energy source to make sure all the servers are working right. And that's why we've talked to different people, finding out that geothermal, anything around hydro is interesting. Look what Iceland is doing when it comes to geothermal also. But I have a feeling as we get closer to this next generation of processing power, I think the heat is going to be less of an issue, especially when we find a real quantum solution, which I believe is next year. Next year is what's going to crack the code, and theoretically can crack the code of crypto also, which is a concern also. Okay, also I want to know about scams. When do you get word of a scam that's happening? Is it after it's already been busted and cracked, or do you guys get to see stuff over at Cointelegraph while it's in midstream?
That's a very tricky question, Ken. I guess there are different situations, of course, and sometimes we have some insights. Sometimes we have our guts that tell us about, our interaction with a potential scam. Sometimes just sharing my personal experience today. There are scammers on Telegram that are imposting your friends and connections. And I was annoyed today because I had this message, hi, this empty void, hi. I hate receiving this hi because it means that I have to respond, but there is nothing information on this message. So I responded hi, and then I got, how are you? So I got even more annoyed. It's like this pointless, useless messages, but I still responded because, well, this is a person with whom I care about my relationship with. And the third message from this person came where they ask for money. Send some money to my Ledger wallet, please, and then I will give it back as soon as possible. So yeah, I'm promising here officially with US testimonies, I will never ever again respond to pointless messages. Like, if you want something from me, just tell me, what is it?
But maybe you were the beginning of a DeFi fund they were trying to create by you lending them money and they would pay you interest back.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
Do you also find that you are under the gun having a digital publication to keep stuff always active in the news channel? I mean, so what's the news when at one point in time the news cycle was 1 week. You would come out on a Sunday night, hopefully Monday morning, it would not be talked about for an entire week. Now with Facebook and social media, this news cycle is almost like 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, it could get old, right?
Yeah, that is so true. But also just think about this from the other side. Like every news that actually gets traction means that an army of scammers attack our Twitter, our YouTube, our social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere. And we not only have to like manage reactions from the audience and interact with them, but also delete those messages that are incredibly annoying. And unfortunately, there are still people who actually fall for this scams.
Wow. Okay. So today we are going to talk about scams, about protecting yourself, how to know what countries, or let's call them different types of authorities, are got your back to make sure you are trading in exchanges that are regulated properly. We'll talk about things like BitConnect, which of course, big scam if you remember that one. And we'll really dive into that. And that's actually going to lead us to our very first guest, who I'm very excited to have on with us, because I want you to think about the government of Dubai. Dubai is probably one of the most progressive governments in the world, hands down. And they have taken an initiative, and what they basically said is, if you want to do business in Dubai, you have to be active, and you have to conform to what we're doing. And many might say, wait a second, if I have to deal with the government, it's going to be lethargic and slow. And that's not the case whatsoever. Matter of fact, we are joined by this very handsome gentleman who's joining us right now. Terry, can you do us a favor? Can you introduce yourself, your title, and all those accolades that go along with you?
I'm the small person that no one likes to talk about.
Oh, stop it. That's not true.
And the humble one. Okay.
Thank you, of course, for having me on the show. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Christina. Before I start, I know you guys always like to get the interviews question out and the comments out, but it's only fair to say that it's important to thank the media and people that are in your roles, because it's always important to send the right communication. So thank you for having me and for hosting this webinar. So for those who don't know, my name is Tariq Mohammed. I'm the head of the virtual assets at the Dubai Police at the General Department of Criminal Investigations. It is a new section we recently launched under the vision of Lieutenant General Abdullah Khalifa Al-Marri, who's the Commander-in-Chief of Dubai Police, in a proactive manner on April 1st, 2021 this year. And we did so based on the heightened risks that we've seen in the last few years within the crypto space. And from a law enforcement perspective, we always ask ourselves, not only how to solve the current crime trends, but how to predict future crime trends and how to mitigate those risks. So we were very lucky, or at least I could say I was very lucky at the time when we came up with the idea. Everyone thought we were a little bit crazy at the time, me and my team, setting up a crypto section in Dubai Police. We still not have the legislative laws in place. We did not have any procedures in place to have that section effectively doing its job. That being said, we were very lucky. Even at the time, I can give a small example. I was very lucky to study a master's at the University of Nicosia, a master's in blockchain and digital currency. And at the time, when I requested, our administrative department and HR, could I please go in for the studies for 1 year? They were looking at me saying, yeah, but we don't recognize this degree in the country. Blockchain is not, again, doesn't have any terminology. It doesn't make sense for you to go, waste government resources, money, and study it. And at the time, I tried to fight for it. And I was lucky that, again, I always go back to this point that our commander is a very proactive person. He takes 10 steps ahead of the game. And when I went and I told him these were the challenges, like, just go for it. I'll give you my approval. This will come. It's just a matter of time. We need to be ready, and we need to have the right knowledge in place.
Tariq, real quick, step back for a second. This division that's been established only a couple of months ago, is this the first of its kind in the whole world, or are there other police forces around the world that have similar divisions?
So what we've done as a benchmark, we've seen that there are many departments that look into virtual assets under their cybercrime departments. But in the UAE, at least in the region and the Arab world, we're the first police force to dedicate a fully virtual asset crime section under the AML, the anti-money laundering department as per the also FATF recommendations that we follow. So this is a first in the region, and for us, it's important also to build the human capacity with it.
That's fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit more about your team, Tarek?
As I was saying, today we have a small team, but they're all new joinees in the force. They are 50% women, by the way, so it is not a male-dominated organization or entity. All of them are currently now going through intensive training from the crypto perspective, understanding the blockchain, understanding how to investigate, because the idea is not only about being able to prove a case specifically by understanding how crypto works, but also trying to understand the purpose of the technology. Because, for example, today, I can talk about it. Like last week, we had for the first time someone putting a complaint saying, I got my NFT stolen from my trust wallet. So now it's not a question about crypto, it's how do you deal with NFTs? How do you validate that as evidence? How do you validate that as a criminal case? How do you take it to court, into the prosecution? It's quite challenging and new for us because it requires us to think outside of the box, but within the existing legislative matters. Having said that, and I think this is an important point to mention, probably the audience here will be the first to know this at this time. Usually, and I think Ken knows this, and of course, Christina, it takes a lot of time for any government globally to change any laws in its system. And, there is a due process that happens. As Ken mentioned, we are quite dynamic in our government. We are quite proactive in the way how we do things. On April 1st, we dedicated, or we created a section on Dubai Police, and in under 6 months, and again, I have to say this is again, government legislative is a very, very bureaucratic process. Under 6 months, on September 13 this year, we were able to update our AML law with Article 16, which now criminalizes unregulated virtual asset providers in the EU and in Dubai and in the UAE.
Oh, wow.
So this is a very big change. It sends a strong message to the market that yes, the UAE is willing to grow its crypto space, to become a crypto hub. But in the same time, we want to ensure that no one abuses this system from a reputational risk, because in the end of the day, the protection of our economy and the investors in the UAE is important for us.
Well, we're going to actually bring up one of the exchanges later on, BitOasis, who has conformed and utilized you to help set the groundwork. So let's step back a little more again, because when we think about exchanges and countries that have been very cooperative, they may have been too cooperative, where they've almost turned a blind eye and allowed these exchanges to do almost anything they want. I think of places like in Morocco or Monaco, or something that just kind of sits out there. We get kind of concerned because it seems like government should be involved, but they're taking a hands-off approach. You guys are not being like that whatsoever.
No, we're not. Look, in the end of the day, I know this is sometimes some people might receive the message wrong, but as law enforcement, we're not there only to catch bad people. I mean, this happens because there's a gap in the system. We're now taking that step before and saying, no, we want to be proactive. We want to ensure that before crime occurs, before people get defrauded, how can we allow or encourage a ecosystem which is safe for all stakeholders within the crypto space, for artists to issue their NFTs, for investors to invest in regulated exchanges, for investors to ensure that even the regulated exchanges are having approved tokens or listings in their exchanges that are not bound to criminal aspects, let's say, for example, or scams or ICOs or whatever you want to call them. And this is saying that, okay, we want to be a step ahead. We want to ensure that before the crime happens, let's make sure that we can safeguard that ecosystem.
That's really impressive. And what tools for combating this crypto crime beyond raising the population and the ecosystem's awareness of digital asset scams does Dubai Police have at your disposal?
Ooh, I cannot say all the tools and secrets. Look, in the end of the day, there's many aspects. There's the awareness aspect, of course, which is public. That being is example, this webinar for an example, raising the awareness directly to the community, trying engaging with the community. Of course, we have our policy perspective, which is in cooperation with several entities under the National Office of AML and TF, which is an office being led on a federal body by His Excellency Mr. Ahmed Reaab, also in coordination with our Ministry of Justice, with our public prosecutors and courts. So it's a very big partnership and system, as well as, of course, our technical and police tools that we have. Of course, I cannot disclose them, then we wouldn't be ahead of the game, let me put it in that way. But of course, we want to ensure always public's interest before anyone. At the end of the day, that is the message of Dubai Police that we send generally and in any aspects of the fields that we work in.
How does this change the paradigm then when someone looks at an exchange that's coming out of the UAE compared to a neighboring country that does not have a relationship with their cybercrime division? Do you think it shows that they're not as stable or as trustworthy as what you guys are doing in UAE?
I think it really comes down to wise leadership. I can't comment on external jurisdictions. However, again, and I emphasize, you need to have a proactive leadership. We know that there's been a national blockchain agenda example policy in the UAE for technology to be used at the government level, at the state level. We know there's appetite, and we know there's fantastic ideas. I mean, as you said, Ken, the UAE is a hub for attracting talent, and we've seen, personally, I've seen a lot of great startups and great ideas, but in the end of the day, we want to ensure that these startups work with the best of conformity and also uniformity within our legislative nature. The idea of having these laws is not necessarily, to put barriers, but if anything, is to protect people. And this
Absolutely.
is fundamentally what we're trying to do. And this is
security. It's security. You're creating security, and I love that. Hey, Christina, what is your favorite police TV show or espionage show? What do you like? Are you a CSI person?
Oh gosh, no, but I'm waiting for a show about Dubai police for sure. Tarek, are you going?
I don't know if that's going to be fun because they're behind their keyboards and they're just kind of looking around, and then they're looking at their phones.
So yeah, I guess it will be fun for all the crypto community. That is what people want to know. But
tell us, what are those things that you have foiled? What are in the short time that you've been around, what kind of things that you have saw that were scams and you stopped them, or you were in partnership with other governments to prevent it from happening?
Now, to make sure that I am diplomatically correct, I will only discuss what has been publicly mentioned from our organization, of course.
But remember, Christina knows everything. So everything has been public over at CoinTelegraph.
She has some good resources, let's say, at her hands. But look, from a general aspect, and I can only discuss on matters that has been mentioned publicly, and it has been mentioned also in our international reports, such as FATF reports. Of course, as you guys heard recently, the UAE government was able to disrupt and arrest a member or a criminal organization that were trying to issue a Ponzi scheme coin, which was called Financial Org or Foin. At a federal level, we were able to take this case, and there was an arrest of almost 40 members within that group, as well as 860 million dirhams worth of fines issued to those legal person and entities. Of course, it was a complex investigation. It took us about a year and a half, 2 years almost, I can say, and it involved several police organizations across the UAE to work on this case. But the outcome in the end was very positive for the country. We showed our effectiveness in being able to pursue complex money laundering cases with the use of virtual assets as well as legal entities. So it is reflective on our capability. But I think the more exciting one that everyone likes to talk about, and this is the question that I keep on getting a lot, is the case of Hush Puppy, which was recently.
Explain Hush Puppy.
So for those who don't know, Hush Puppy, of course, was a famous social media influencer by the name of Ramon Abbas. He was living in Dubai. Luckily, he was not committing any crime in Dubai. The funny thing is that our discussion always with our international partners that these criminals commit their crime overseas, but they all run away and want to stay to Dubai. But the joke is, they can run, but they cannot hide. So, of course, with our international partners, we always have strong police-to-police cooperation, in which we, for example, for this specific case, we did a joint operation with our US counterparts, and we were able to arrest Hush Puppy, identify his network, and identify, his assets for confiscation. So, but the interesting part for this specific case and where the crypto aspect comes into it is that what we've seen is that a lot of the cybercrime he was committing was purely done on crypto. So he was responsible for one of the biggest ransomware attacks across the world, with the public keys and addresses for the Bitcoins and wallets. And he's also responsible for moving a lot of illicit finance or illicit money through crypto. Of course, within a year, we were able to build a successful operation on this, and that was called Operation Fox Hunt 2, based on Fox Hunt 1. For those that are interested to look more into it, we can, the links are publicly available on the news agencies online, the UAE news agencies, and we're more than happy to continue to show that we're able to do more successful operations in the short term, the near time coming.
Fascinating. Well, it's pretty clear what happens to those people who are scammers, but can you tell us a little bit more what happens with the stolen digital funds? Is there any mechanism for custody of such assets on behalf of the state, or any other mechanism?
So, funny that you've mentioned this. We recently did a workshop with BitOasis. I think it was this week, if I'm not mistaken, or last week, in which now we're also showing again to the world our public and private partnerships, because in the end of the day, again, the police is only successful with the success of our partners, and whether they are media partners, for example, like you guys, or our private sector partners such as BitOasis, we don't take credit entirely for that success. One of the issues that we've had, and this is interesting because when we're talking about legislative natures, people tend to forget about this aspect. When we were able to confiscate digital assets, the only problem that we had was that at a certain date of the crime, we would arrest, for example, an individual who had 1 Bitcoin stolen, and we'd recover the 1 Bitcoin, but assuming it was $50,000 at that day. The next day, probably it fell to 30, or it went up to 90. So we are now creating a framework for the first time in the UAE in which we will have a due process for the confiscation of digital assets that we can guarantee that at the time of the crime, those assets are transferred to the local currency for proceeding matters for the court, so that there's no risk of devaluing the, let's call it the proceeds of crime in that formal manner.
You brought up NFTs earlier. How does NFTs conform with inside that?
So again, this is still something that we're looking at. Again, this was very recently. I didn't expect, to be honest, that I would have a victim who had his NFT stolen. Of course, this is something that we're still looking at on how do we identify this NFT. So, and these are the questions that we're asking, because today there are only a few platforms, and most of them are, again, decentralized platforms, without mentioning names, but of course, you would know the main ones. How do we ensure that those NFTs are not being sold? How do we ensure that those NFTs are not being pushed to other platforms? Is something, again, we're evaluating at, and we're looking at the best methodology to do so. But again, it says that really, I really like you using a quote by Mark Goodman. He's also one of the
I've known Mark for 20 years. Yep.
We had the pleasure to host him in Dubai Police, and I like one of his good quotes. He always says that criminals are the first users of new technology. They're the first ones that will always use new technology or innovations before it goes to the public.
It's actually the porn industry is generally the first. Just FYI, it's generally the porn, and then it's the I'm being serious. It's porn. By the way,
so we do not consider porn criminals. I like this.
Hey, anyone out there that you're watching us and you have a question or a comment and you'd like to ask directly, please raise your digital hand. You can see it on the bottom of the Zoom area where you could raise your hand, and we love to have you contribute and come in and ask a question. Matter of fact, I think we have our first question. Who do we have? What is your name, sir?
Hi there, guys. My name is Saed Ereiqat. Ken, we're actually well acquainted. It's so nice to see your face again. I wanted to speak on the topic of the recent news that's come out about Trade Center licensing crypto trading. So I'm not quite aware of what the extent of that license is. Do you guys have any insight on that?
I think I need to
do.
this one. I'll assert the agreement. The problem as a law enforcement is very difficult for me to speak on behalf of regulators, but let me speak on my personal note and not on my professional note. Today, the Securities and Commodities Authorities have done an excellent or extensive work and quite excellent work in coming up with draft regulations that will allow businesses to operate with exchanges and custody services. I know there has been a review on the moment that is ongoing, but it should be released very soon. That being said, ESCA is always engaging with the local partners to ensure that those MOUs are in place before those licenses, of course, comes out. But again, this shows that those bodies or those free zones independently will eventually be able to provide those licensing options. I know it's still a little bit gray at the moment from which jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but hopefully in the next few weeks, I think this will be much clearer as an image. But again, that being said, I always want to use the use case again of BitOasis. I know Ada is with us on the call and she'll be coming, of what was a successful journey to be able to convince legislators and policymakers to push for those legislations and those regulations for accepting BitOasis as the first regulated exchange.
All right, let's do another question, Hamed. You see, come on. There you go.
Hello.
Yes, what's
Good
your
evening,
question?
everyone. Yes, my question is, it would be a lot easier for us as a trader in the UAE if we have it in a way that would be easier to us to transfer money instead of doing it from the exchanges, the famous exchanges. Of course, you all know about the famous exchanges that we use in our region. But it would be much easier if we have an option or an opportunity to transfer our money to our bank account directly. I'm interested to know about this. There is a way or a future plan about it.
So I could respond to that very quickly, and maybe Ola will emphasize a little bit more. Today, the policy that we did, and we've been working on with our legislators and our partners, especially at the National Office of AML and TF in Abu Dhabi, they're a federal entity. What we wanted to encourage and push for is that we wanted digital exchanges to be regulated, but we wanted to make sure that we could mitigate all the risks. So what do we mean by that? Ensuring that all the cryptos coming to these exchanges are not coming from proceeds of crime. We wanted to ensure that also there will not be an abuse of legal persons or entities through those exchanges. We want to ensure that no zero-proof digital currencies would be available for sale or trade at those exchanges. I think, and I give a bit of credit to Ola, she's done extensive work to get a lot of compliance and requirements done.
We'll bring her on in a moment and talk about
that question.
Yeah.
And that allowed the regulators and the policymakers to say, okay, you've met the requirements. And I can ensure that the requirements that was set further was beyond any requirements that has ever been done to any businesses from a compliance perspective. And with that, I think Ola recently BitOasis was recently able to sign an agreement with the FIU, which is the UAE's Financial Intelligence Unit, again, who were very optimistic to do this. And that is now allowing, and I'm sure BitOasis to have banking partners in the UAE. So hopefully, I think I would leave that commercial question, I would say, towards Ola to finalize it. I don't want to talk too much on the
Okay, let's do it. By the way, if you have a question or a comment you want to add to this conversation, please raise your hand. I want to remind everybody that October 17th to the 20th is the Future Blockchain Summit, also FinTech Surge and GITEX and Expo 2020. We want you to come to Dubai, share time with us, meet these incredible speakers that you've been seeing us interview over the last almost, six months we've been doing this, Christina? 6 months.
Time is running out so quickly.
We have a real relationship now. We're past the 6-month mark. Tell your husband.
We've never seen each other. Can you imagine?
Yeah, we will. It's all going to happen. And we want you to join us, please. Understand this. This is probably the epicenter of opportunity when it comes to what's going on in the blockchain crypto space. Please join us. Again, go to Future Blockchain Summit and participate and come and visit us and join us there. And you actually you can introduce who our next speaker is, because it seems like you've already met. Yeah, you've already mentioned her a few times because it sounds like you guys have worked very, very closely with what they're doing over at BitOasis. You want to do the introduction? Tariq?
I don't mind. I think she's fed up. I think Ola is a little bit fed up from my calls or seeing me because we've been asking her a lot for the past few weeks for regulations and policy. But Ola, of course, is a respective partner industry and stakeholder that we work closely with. So I'm sure she's going to probably come online in any second.
There she is.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Ola.
Hi,
Ola,
guys.
thanks a lot for joining us.
If I give her a call or introduce her any more further this week, she's probably
I think started by now you could do the full introductions.
Ola, could you do us a favor? Can you tell us a little about BitOasis?
Sure, yes. So BitOasis, we're the first and the largest crypto exchange based in the UAE. We started around 2016. The first few years obviously was quite a struggle trying to navigate and understand the regulatory environment. We started our work or our collaboration with Dubai Police around 2018, and we've fully formalized it, obviously, 2019, and then onwards now, obviously, we're working on a much wider scope. And we gotten also other licenses from Abu Dhabi Global Markets, and now we're growing across the UAE and obviously internationally as well. So it's been an exciting journey starting a crypto exchange here in the region.
But you've taken a very unique approach. You've really collaborated with the government to make sure that there's a synergistic relationship between Dubai and BitOasis. Was that something that you wanted to do at the very beginning, or is that something that was introduced to you later on? Tell us about that relationship.
Yeah, 100%. Like in our view, obviously my view as an entrepreneur in the crypto space is that this space can't grow and the growth can't be sustainable if you don't have regulation, I would say progressive stance by governments to ensure the growth of this technology and then, wider mainstream adoption. So, I think regulation is part and parcel of what we do. And yes, if that actually was there in day one, that would have definitely been how we would have started BitOasis. But the reality was, there was a market demand, I've seen an opportunity, my co-founders and I, and we're really determined to be like, what, crypto is the future. And it starts with building secure wallets and an easy way for people to buy and sell. And, obviously it was Bitcoin at the time, and now there's like thousands of other tokens. The regulatory piece did not exist at that point. We did proactively try to reach out to regulators, through our legal advisors and all of that. And I think they were like, well, we don't even know what Bitcoin is. Like, we don't even know what you're talking about.
How did you explain that?
Yeah, exactly. And like, let alone like an hour trying to explain what Bitcoin and blockchain is. And they're like, we still don't understand what you're saying. So anyway, so we've understood what the risks were at the time and continue to be, obviously, until now. So we've self-regulated a lot of the work that we've been doing. So, hiring a compliance officer was like employee number one at that point, or employee number two. And working with legal advisors even before launching was important. We needed to understand the regulatory environment, the legality around what we do. Also, like, what are the AML and CTF requirements, customer KYC on a federal level, on a state level? What does the central bank say, FATF, so all of that. So we've done a lot of work and homework, I would say, and heavy lifting before we actually started, because we wanted to make sure is that, guys, like, regulation will come at some point. So we better be ready once that happens, and we're able to answer questions when someone, like Dubai Police, like Tarek, comes in and says, hey, what is your compliance and what's your AML framework, right? And we were like, yeah, here it is. And obviously, when we started the collaboration with Tarek and his team, there's been aspects of our business also that we continue de-risking with them. So certain things around, tokens that we had on the platform, tokens that we can list, further improving some frameworks that we had, the reporting aspect as well, with Dubai Police information sharing. So yeah, that was very, very helpful, because at that point, there's clarity, There are things that we can work on. There's clarity on what the path forward looks like for exchanges like us. We can understand where the, I would say, kind of like black and white, aspects around what we do. Before, it was just like gray, and, we just had to continuously make a judgment based on the risks and mitigating the risks.
How many people comprises your team? How many people are needed in order to enable a sustainable development for the largest exchange in UAE?
So we're now over 80, crossing to 100 actually. I think by mid-October or end of the month. So we're growing at a very, very, very fast pace. The majority of our teams are between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So we've got more than 50% of our team actually is between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And then we've got other places in Jordan, Czech Republic, and elsewhere. And a big chunk of our team is obviously, tech and product and, around our platform. Then we've got obviously, compliance, ops, and full kind of management team and all of that. So yeah, it's exciting. We're also hiring. So whoever's on the call that would like
there you go.
Startup.
When you look at Binance, and Binance just kind of seems like they almost can do almost anything. It seems like, they're just kind of running wild. And then you look at yourself with the compliance that you have to apply to be within the constructs of what Dubai wants. Does it frustrate you that they're able to run wild, or does it upset you that they don't have proper compliance themselves?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think this comes up, in every strategy meeting, discussion with an investor, what products we should roll out and all of that. I think at the end of the day, it's a mindset and your thesis on the space, right? And then that dictates what strategy you take as an entrepreneur and someone who's building a product in the crypto space. Do you believe that regulation will come in and it's part of what you do, and you have to have this form of sustainable relationship with the regulators and kind of, walk all together until you can run? Or do you just go and smash everything and just kind of grow wild and then get cracked on, right? So eventually something is going to happen and the regulators are going to come in and, kind of say, put their foot down and say, this is how things affect. Those risks are mitigated and met, and there's proper regulation in the traditional financial services. And so many other sectors as well. And crypto is not going to be any different, right? Where there are risks, there should be addressed, and there proper regulation, in there, and risks mostly on, obviously the consumers to begin with, and then other risks around AML, CTF, and all of that. So that's a decision that you have to make as an entrepreneur, right?
I'm specifically talking about the big one on the block being Binance, and how they operate as, they're a break everything type of group, right? Yeah. They just throw everything against the wall and sees what sticks. And I don't know about you, but I get more complaints about what happens on people's wallets are locked up, and CZ never answers anything. He's out there on Twitters, throwing things out there, but he never responds to any type of situation. So it just seems like if you're trying to create the next level of an exchange, you want to have a conformance environment with a government to feel more stability is there. At least that's my perception, right?
Yeah, that's, I would say that perception most of our customers have as well. And that's, as a customer as well, is something I care about. I mean, I myself is a customer of BitOasis and then other exchanges that I use. And it's also what provides trust over, centralized exchanges or companies like us, where we custodize customer funds and we deal with people's money, right? So can't comment so much about Binance and what they do, but we do know that fraud is happening on peer-to-peer exchanges as well, and we've got people who complain about that as well. So that's definitely a short perception across.
Oh, wait. Mr. CSI wants to say something. I can see. Go ahead.
I just want to add one more point to Ala's point. Look, I know that BitOasis has been the first exchange that has kind of more or less regulated. And I mean, we would love the UAE government in Dubai to see more and more exchanges, let's say, operating, at least those that can come to the same conformity as BitOasis. In the end of the day, we want to ensure also fair competition, which is important. So Ella is the first mover, I know, but I keep on telling her I am open and I would love to see other exchanges meeting this, as long as they meet the same standards, operate in Dubai. That being said, I don't want to specifically talk about any other exchanges, but one thing that saddens me, and that what we've seen a lot, is those that are offering peer-to-peer payments is really a big portion of fraud happening. Because one, what we've seen, and again, I'm giving you actual examples, either the funds never get transferred, right? This is the basic one, which is not the really serious one. The second, which becomes the more serious, is saying that, okay, pass me your crypto, I will transfer you cash, but then you realize that the cash or the money that's coming to your bank account comes from a drug deal, or comes from human trafficking, or comes from the sale of narcotics. And then by law, you are complicit to the crime for receiving those illicit proceeds. And people don't realize this until they say, oh, but I didn't know the guy. How would you accept giving your bank account or your IBAN for someone you've never met to transfer you money? And this becomes the more serious question, because at the end of the day, criminals will always try to abuse systems for the launder their money. And unfortunately, peer-to-peer payments as a business that certain exchanges have been offering has been one of the biggest threat to that aspect, and not only specific to the UAE, but to the global security. Because I have my discussion with my international colleagues and partners, and we're all talking about the same problem, which is also a challenge. So I think more awareness needs to be done. I mean, the reason why, again, we want regulated exchanges so that people don't receive funds that come from proceeds of crimes or participate in a bigger network. So this is also very important. And that being said, this is the reason why BitOasis is today now connected with the UAE's FIU, because the Financial Intelligence Unit has the responsibility to ensure that those funds are not coming from criminal networks.
But I'm guessing the minute you announced that you did this regulation and you conformed to what Dubai has said, it had to enhance business over at BitOasis. It had to. Did it?
Yes. So for us, we're actually going really public on our partnership and the tie-up with FIU, partnership with Dubai Police. Obviously, the status of BitOasis now that we've got those partnerships, some banking partnerships as well that we've secured. So I think one of the attendees also mentioned that. So I think that definitely will provide a lot more convenience and will make our offering obviously more competitive than other people using international exchanges. And I think the accumulation of all of those will definitely enhance business. So there's a trust element, and then there is providing a very competitive product with ease of funding and withdrawals, which for BitOasis was the big challenge to take over some of this competition, with peer-to-peer exchanges, for example. Because the reality is that customers also seek convenience, right? So if it's easier for them to use a peer-to-peer platform that is doing local transfers and all of that, some customers aren't aware of the actual risks and don't have kind of like a high level of awareness of what the actual risks may be. Like the second risk that Tariq mentioned, I mean, that's like a serious risk on customers. So they kind of opt for convenience, right? But with BitOasis, what we're aiming to do right now is really highlight and go much kind of louder on the partnerships that we have in place right now that we can go really public with that. And then the convenience aspect where you can easily fund and withdraw. It's UAE bank accounts, your money is custodized in banks in the UAE, and essentially the combination of those two will definitely drive, drive a lot of
let's do a last question from our audience right now. Aladdin, do you want to have a question real quick? Hello.
Yes, thanks. I just have a question, actually. It's so nice to see Tariq and Ola over here, but you have your FIA partnership as well as Dubai Police. My question is more about the UAE and the other regulators in the UAE to see BitOasis actually come up and have us as customers comfortably. I personally have been with BitOasis for the past 6 years, but there are other regulators that will make it much easier. How is your cooperation with those regulators? And if you have actually reached the common grounds that you have reached with the FIA and Dubai Police on, because that I think will ease your relationship probably with banks and the banking partnerships that you're talking about.
Yes. So, I mean, we are obviously engaging with different regulators across the UAE. So, we've also recently secured our final regular approvals from Abu Dhabi Global Markets. I think your question is probably more on, essentially what is ASCA doing in the Central Bank of UAE, and we continue engaging and understanding eventually, regulation on a federal level, potentially how might that look like. under those two regulators. Tariq, you might be able to add a bit more comments in terms of that, but we continuously engage with regulators to get further clarity on that. I think the main thing for us is really ensuring that we've got full alignment with law enforcement agencies. And obviously, we're very grateful for the clarity that Dubai Police provided us in early days, and now obviously the work that we're doing with the FIU, and making sure that we are compliant with FATF requirements, because we know the FATF obviously have been also very proactively in working with different governments, including UAE and internationally. So that was a huge, obviously factor for us to make sure that now that we've got this clarity, BitOasis can also operate in a much more I would say, scaled way than how we used to do that before. So.
Thank you so much for your question. Christina, you get the last question. Come on,
Sorry, I think Tariq had a comment that wanted to add on that.
Just wanted to add one statement, if hopefully time allows it. The UAE's National Office of Anti-Money Laundering, or the Executive Office of National Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing, with the support of the Governor of the Central Bank and the responsible ministers, have came up with a framework that will allow both the Central Bank and the Securities and Commodities Authorities to work for the framework on virtual assets, in terms of a national level, to ensure that the divisions and roles and responsibility are divided. That has been publicly announced, I believe, this month, if I'm not mistaken. So again, it's dynamic, it's moving. Certain things will take time, but we are trying as the industry to make it faster. But as well as this is, I don't want to say this is a responsibility for the government, it's also a responsibility for the private sector, because the private sector, the media, also like you guys, have the responsibility or the strength, at least, to put conformity to decision makers, to ensure that, okay, you know what, BitOasis is doing a good job. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with taking that risk. Cointelegraph, for example, is sending the right, communication, the right message to the public. They're increasing the awareness. Ken, with his wonderful talks, again, sends conformity to whoever sees this later on. So it's really trying to provide conformity to the decision makers in the end of the day.
Yeah, that's so important. Really fascinating. And I'm really happy to see that you have this synergy, guys, between you, like proactive law enforcement agencies, proactive entrepreneurs, that together actually raise public awareness that helps create this sort of oasis in the middle of competition and, people who search for convenience, that creates an oasis of public awareness, of education, educated public, educated entrepreneurs, educated regulators. So my last question is, what's next? How do you see the ecosystem developing in the next, let's say, months? What are we expecting from the others, and what are we expecting from ourselves?
I will leave the answer to Ola first.
Me, okay. So, there's different things we're working on, right? So there's a tighter collaboration, private public sector. So there are a number of collaborations that we're discussing with Dubai Police. I'm not sure I can actually talk about that, but once this is out, obviously, you say it in terms of, things around awareness, things around making sure that customers realize what the risks are, and, all of that, and like a couple of other stuff. We are also providing local funding options for our customers. So a highly localized product that customers can use in a much easier way. We know that this was like the biggest pain point for our customers in the UAE. And, we've had our share struggle, obviously working closely with banks. So, I think that will provide a much better experience for customers. And then going forward, tighter, I would say, collaboration with regulators down the line, and I think bringing more stakeholders into this ecosystem, because I think there's huge potential for the adoption of digital assets and this technology, and I think we're only really scratching the surface right now. So
it's so exciting, everything that you two brought up. It's great to have you here. Again, reminder is October 17th through the 20th we have a whole bunch of things going on. Of course, the Future Blockchain Summit, FinTech Surge. We have GITEX, Expo 2020, lots happening in Dubai. As I mentioned also, it is a pool city. It pulls in incredible talent. You don't want to miss this opportunity. It will be the epicenter of opportunity on the planet. So make sure you join all of us there. I can't wait. I'm in Dubai next week. I'm not sure if anybody wants to go see the new James Bond movie. It'd be great to go to a real theater. I'm in Bali and there's like teeny theaters out here. I want a big theater to go see James Bond, but I'm just throwing it out there. Anyone?
I'm happy to invite you. I'm happy to invite you. I know you're trying. I don't have an Aston Martin though, but I'm sure.
I don't need Aston Martin. It's just James
I
Bond.
envy you guys. I will join Dubai only in 2 weeks.
But then it's Dune. Then we'll see Dune in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. That's even better.
Dune, yes. I'm actually looking forward to that.
I like how you can throw those out. Dune. And then Matrix 4. We got all these. But in the meantime, it is all around the Future Blockchain Summit. We want to thank you so much for joining us. Christina and I love that you were able to make time for us and the audience out there. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone at the Future Blockchain Summit, 17th through the 20th of October. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.